Excuses serve only the people who make them. And only for a prescribed period of time, because you're going to get frustrated with the potential time. 10 years would have passed. What could you have done? You could have a PhD by now if you had decided, I'm going to choose my heart.
There's nothing more painful than waking up at 80 years old or 90 years old and realizing I could have done better with my life.
Behind closed doors, when these cameras go off, what does Yann do to get to where he is? Am I willing to do what it takes?
Lord, we thank you. We thank you because you knew that this day would come. We thank you because before we were born, Father, you had a plan for us. You aligned this day, and you aligned that every single part of this day may happen according to how you have called for it to be. At this moment, Lord, we ask that you may take control. We pray that day 1, day 2, and each and every single interview may achieve the purpose that we have set for this podcast to be. Lord, we pray that it may give an opportunity to the audience to be transformed, to be inspired, to make them see your glory in each and every single one of their actions, that they may be able to make the first step in order for you to take them in the direction that you have called in their lives. We pray that you may speak through us, that you may reveal your glory and your wisdom through us. We pray that through this podcast, it may transcend our wildest imagination, that each and every single person that is part of this podcast may receive their part of the blessing that you have in store for us. We cover each and every equipment, each and every single person, each and every single word that's going to be said in the name of Jesus. And in the name of Jesus, we give full control to you, Lord. In your mighty name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Here we are again. Like we said last time.
I'm excited.
So the reason why we're here is because based on the first that are interested to have a deeper conversation about some of the stuff that we were talking about. But I felt like it made more sense for us to try our best to not formalize this specific episode.
Yeah.
And to just go with the flow, and we're both Christians, and to just let the Holy Spirit speak to us.
100%.
And I think essentially when we started this journey, we really wanted to create something that will make people take the first step, understand their gift, their skill, and find a way to lead themselves through the journey. But my question has been, ever since our first episode, how have you been?
I've been well. Life has happened. I mean, it's been 6 months since we last shot the previous ones. Time flies. And obviously, it took a turn and a journey that has been very inspirational for me, very gratifying, because it was total surrender. And the responses were mostly positive. And of course, if you put something like this out there, you open yourself out to any eventuality, right? There's been some questions, people wondering, who is the show? What's the production company behind it? And what's the why? I think we're pretty clear about what our why is. Hey, Catalyst family, if you're here, it means you're all about growth, inspiration, and game-changing conversations. And trust me, you're in the right place. Our show, and I call it ours because it's yours and mine, is not just a podcast. It's a movement. We bring you raw, unfiltered, and inspirational stories from innovators, entrepreneurs, and game changers who are shaping the future, and you get to be a part of the conversation. So, if you're ready to elevate your mindset, be part of a thriving community, and build real connections, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so that you never miss an episode. And while you're here, please do drop a comment below. Let us know where you're tuning in from, and let us know what topics you'd like to see and hear next. And let's grow together. Remember, every conversation is a catalyst for something bigger. Welcome to the movement, and welcome to the Catalyst Conversations. But to answer your question very simply, I've been well. I've been in awe of sort of the direction it's taken. And when you're in full surrender, it's just the most beautiful thing to witness how God flows.
Yeah. A lot of question has been about you, actually. who is
Really? Yeah, of
so
course.
eloquent. And you spoke about how you got here. You literally spoke about your story, etc.
Yeah.
But I think one thing that made your speech stand out was the fact that it came from a woman. For some reason, it feels like we still live in a country where you would expect such conversation to be led by men. And my question then becomes, why do you think that is? Why do you think that there's still those stigma in society that makes women feel like they cannot actually take those positions, lead conversations? And even in the corporate place, we see it. Most of the times, it's boys' clubs.
Absolutely.
So there's very few environments and industries that are actually prone to make women grow. Why do you think that is?
It is a decades-old conversation that we've been having in boardrooms, in broadcasting. I mean, I'll speak to my own personal journey. I think as a woman, we're very conscious about how we're perceived. One thing I admire about a man, right, or a man generally with the masculine energy, men go after what they want boldly, unapologetically, with absolute conviction. And I find in most cases with women, we calculate the pros and cons, how we will be viewed, how we will come across. That's just one sphere. But I think obviously in certain rooms, the boys' club exists. We cannot run from it. It's a reality. And that's why there's challenges with gender disparities, even with salaries. You and I could be working the same job. But because I am a certain gender, and we find this out by conversation and dialogue and I mean, I've been in corporate and I have experienced where people work in the same position, but because of different genders, the men will get 3 times as much as woman does. It is an unfortunate reality that exists and one that we're trying to really break those barriers around. But I think we cannot have it happen without the support of the man. I mean, the age-old song says this is a man's world. Of course, it wouldn't be nothing without a woman or a girl. And it's up to the men, and I'll say women, but mostly the men to open those doors because they are in positions of power, realistically.
True.
In most of the sectors and industries that I've been involved in, and because of the nature of the job that I do, I get exposed to sectors that are varying and some are critical to the economy of the country. It's something that we've made enough noise and it will take action. You know, we have conferences around it. We have women-centric sort of events. And then we have even issues or sub-dialogues around women that are in power. Don't send the elevator back down. So I think we still have a long way to go, but we should sort of change the strategy because we can't be singing the same song centuries or decades later. But, you know, with that said, I see there's a shift. Women are starting to be a little more vocal and bold. I mean, a lot of women that I engage with personally have, you know, ventured out into academia because historically we have to be the nurturers, the caretakers. We take care. I mean, I'll paint a scenario. This is a very long-winded response to your questions, but I just want to paint a story.
Remember, it's a conversation.
It is a conversation, right? I like that. That's why I love this podcast. I think with me, if, say, you're a man, I'm a woman, you paint, you put cameras in our houses, I have to wake up a little early because I have to cook and cater to you, cook and cater for the kids, cook and cater for myself. Perhaps I have an hour dedicated to praying and spirituality. I have to take care of self before everybody else that I nurture and take care of and cater to in the household gets up. And without that, you know, we're rhythmic, we're multitaskers, we make things happen. Already my day has been filled with so much that I had to exert a lot of energy into, right? And I think our energy reserves and all that we have to deal with, the monthly cycles, the emotional issues, the hormones, the carrying, because we're incubators for babies that we bring into this world. There's so much intricacies. By the time 12 o'clock hits, you've probably preserved and had your energy throughout the day. I'm exhausted. And my attitude might be a little different because I've done so much in such a short span of time. And that's how the world is wired, unfortunately. But I'm seeing a shift and change in culture and men and women supporting each other in different roles. But I think to answer you in a very big nutshell, it's not a tight one. with the societal expectations that women have, it's not as easy for us to go out with that much energy and boldness and conviction. But yeah, men must also come into this conversation. Say, we see you. We see capability and capacities. We see more women CEOs, bus drivers, train drivers, broadcasters, speakers. There's not a lot of female speakers who would say, I have done this over a certain number of years. I think I'm ready for a coaching job because I have, years of experience. I'm somebody that could do this. So we have a long way to go, but I'm okay with the progress, but men could help us get there a little faster, I think.
I think it also has to do with the different roles that the society we live in decides to give to men and women. I feel like in the corporate world, yes, you have big players that are females, that women-led companies, etc. But I feel like the narrative is always that men work harder than women, and also based on the structural elements of our families. We know where we come from most of the time. Men are the one providing, etc. Women stay home. But from a young age already, if we can start changing the narrative when it comes to that, having more families empowering women to make them understand that nothing can actually stop you from achieving what you are capable of, then they start more and more being exposed to the world that they could potentially be part of and bring solutions and not always feel completely outcast of those worlds.
And this is true. I mean, you hit the nail on the head, right? It starts at home. When chores are assigned a certain way, it's very sexually orientated. You cook, you do the dishes, you clean, and then you go fix the cars, you take the trash out. I think that sort of exposure, it might seem like menial, but it counts for a lot. If I can't, as a woman, go and help my dad fix the car outside, if it's something that's of interest to me, and that little action might help me later perhaps to learn mechanics and engineering and how to put things together, etc. Right? It's things we take for granted, because if we take it back to simple everyday things we take for granted, you'll see where the disparities. I mean, I come from a family or a household where we're raised by our grandparents. Cousins would always come. I'm very fortunate that my grandmother was very worldly and open-minded, right? Her husband cooked all the time. She couldn't cook to save her life. My grandfather enjoyed cooking because he was a wine merchant at the time, so he understood pairing. And even in that era, it was something to behold back then. But I think you can change a culture within the household, and perhaps it can inspire movement, those little sparks of doing things a little differently, even encouraging women. Yes, you can do it. Yes, you can jump from that tree up high. Yeah. Yes, you can join the basketball or soccer team, right? It doesn't take away from our femininity and how we're, wired by the divine, but it opens up to say, I mean, by trial and error, you learn who you are, what you are drawn to, and what ministers to you. I was a tomboy, contrary to popular belief. Really? Yes, absolutely. Baggy jeans, baggy t-shirts, sneakers all the way. But that was my reality for a prescribed period of time. And then I got exposed to different, right? There's a whole chapter of a book I'm writing mentally about that era in my life and the reason it had to happen and how it happened and what inspired it or motivated it. But I think as I grew a little older, I'm like, this dress, it feels kind of okay. Heels, I fell a couple of times, hurt myself. And I would obviously, through exposure of corporate, have to go to etiquette school. Not in the traditional sense, but if you're at dinner, you have to learn how to conduct yourself a certain way. And I'm like, I sort of like this. It's not that I was against it. It's perhaps I wasn't exposed to it in its entirety. I would see it. And because of the clique I hung around with at the time, tomboys and boys, it just seemed taboo. Netball players with the mini skirts jumping in the air and showing us things we did not sign up for, right? And I was judgy. But obviously with exposure and with wherever you are in your life, you get exposed to different and you evolve into something different. I might be a total tomboy or a spinster much later in life, and it might be inspired by certain experiences. You're not the same person you were 10, 15, 20 years ago.
True.
Right? So I think we need to just be agile and accommodate, people in the different evolutions and expose women to more and see the capability and capacity. It's not that we cannot do it. It's perhaps those doors are not open to us enough. And I always say it starts at home.
Yeah. So start at home. It's actually interesting that you mentioned you are not the person that you were 10 years or 15 years ago. And I feel like that's a point that's really important to me, because more and more, I think throughout the past 2 years, I've been doing a lot of learning, and you and I always speak about it. But I feel like the number one lesson is to understand that each and every single part of your life, even when they feel like mistakes, are always contributing towards the next step of your life. And perhaps the conversation around exposing yourself to as many things as possible, to actually slowly start understanding what you can relate to, what you feel more comfortable with, like yourself, the mannerism, the table manners, etc. That's something that started slowly becoming of interest to you. And I feel like most of the time, we as human, and the society also contributes towards that, create some kind of limits of what we think we are actually allowed to learn or be exposed to, and what we are not to touch.
So for me, it's a very emotional and reflective journey, because I was born to a teenage mother, and then I had to be hidden. So there's an aunt in the Val, and then she goes there pregnant, gives birth to myself in the 80s in the Val, and then she gets married at 19, and then I'm thrown into Tabanch in the Free State, which is a totally different reality in life at the then Bukutatswana. Well, Tabanch was part of Bukutatswana. And my grandmother advised me, you're too young, you're in a marriage, and it's unsavory. And then she takes and adopts me. So I'm a tennis ball between these different environments. I'm exposed to different. And that's what informs the evolution. And I promise you, our traumas, our hurts, and things that, to your point, are difficult, ultimately build us to who we become.
True.
Whether we like it or not. And that involves the people around us at the time, whether they're good or bad, and the experiences that are life-changing, right? I always say, I'm not one to say I have no regrets. I have plenty of regrets, but I appreciate that regrets are brought by the frustration of not being where you want to be. Nothing else.
Yeah.
We should also experience or appreciate those experiences that built us to who we are at the time. I mean, the transition from Tabanchu in the Free State, a small town between Bloemfontein and Lesotho, it was a totally different way of life. When I reflect now, I'm like, oh, we suffered. Oh, we were suffering. There was this lard called Wholesome. If the Vaseline ran out, Wholesome in that, it was like the equivalent of margarine. That was your Vaseline for the day, right? And I'm like, we had it bad. But at the time, I didn't know any better.
Yes.
I thought that was everybody else's life. I thought it was okay to go to bed without eating on some nights. Well. Until you get to my feelings like, there's a loaf of cheese in the fridge. Cheese is a once in a year occurrence that we have. And there's an entire loaf in the fridge. How? And then you come to Johannesburg, the salmon, there's asparagus, there's caviar, right? How would you have known that there's better? How would you have reflected to say, oh, we had it bad? But at the time, it wasn't. And there are some traumatic experiences that happened with the transition of being a little girl to a teenager to a young woman. You get exposed to things like the gender issues.
Yes.
Whether it's at the hands of men around a certain environment, right? And they're also exposed to different. So if it's an avalanche effect of certain things, and regrets are inevitable, but they're like inevitable part of life. We shouldn't really shun our experiences, but do better in as far as dealing with them and being grateful to where we got to. Because if you hadn't been exposed to all those bad things, I don't think you'd be at a place where you want to aspire for better. Now you can look back and say, this was actually bad.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
And I want to work as hard as possible to not find myself in that environment.
Absolutely. So the transition is important. Difficulties build character, resilience, and also, if there's no darkness, how will you ever appreciate light?
I think I'll take the conversation on a different road, and we're probably going to go back to what we're discussing now. Do you feel like corporate South Africa fully understand what an ESD is, what role is supposed to play? And do you feel like on the SMME starts, they also understand why do ESD exist and what's the purpose of it?
So this is such an important conversation to me, and I'm glad you're bringing it up just after we speak of social ills and experiences, because I think there's no bridge. We need to bridge the divide between ESD. ESD, it's not their speciality. If a mining house is a mining house, the business is mining, right? A community is a space where there's individuals, perhaps within that mining community, doorstep communities is what we call them, to say, where are we missing each other? Are we not speaking the same language? With all that we have done and accumulated, and as far as profit, how can we help you do and be better and perhaps, intertwine in that marriage and partnership? And I think the mismatch in the conversations that are not being had is to sit like this in a focus group discussion. Because the decisions that are made here do not come from data collected in earnest, all earnesty with the SMMEs. There's no water in the morning when I have to bath. There's probably no electricity. I'm probably living in a shack or a small house and there's no access to better. But here's a mining house that has reports of billions annually. How come they're not? And there's ESD spends, right? You have your KPIs to say, I have suppliers on my database. These are opportunities. But what are the immediate barriers such a trade? Why are we not dealing with that and reverse engineering to say, to get you to this high standard I've set for myself, how can I capacitate you? Now, the mismatch here is that the problem is we want microwave solutions. I want that tender now.
Yes.
You know how to handle the million. Do you know what it takes as soon as you have it? Are you not going to go take care of things you're not supposed to take care of and put,
Prioritize the wrong things.
the money and probably capacitating, because the skills development, it's such an intricate, beautiful model, but between the stakeholders and the SMMEs, the hard, difficult dialogues are not being had. And I find that brings a lot of disruptions in as far as protests, because you're not hearing me. Why would I want to protest and shut you down? We're not hearing each other. This could be a beautiful partnership and marriage, but at the core of it, we're not having the difficult base conversation to say, let's have a difficult conversation. Difficult dialogue sessions need to be had with real-time data. And you can't do that in the air-conditioned boardrooms because you have KPIs. Deal with the issues and have success stories within that lifespan, whether it's 3 or 5 years. Yeah. So I think there's a missing middle, and there ought to be drivers to ensure that this happens systematically and sustainably.
Well, when you think of it, the biggest ESD providers are large corporations. But most of the time, large corporations might not necessarily have the clear understanding of what SMMEs issues are, because they are already operating in the hundreds and thousands of millions and billions of rands. But here comes this person that probably only registered at TIPC 2 weeks ago, that is coming to you and asking for finances. But the truth is, I do agree that there's a huge disconnect between the communication and what's happening. But I do not think that the corporation are actually playing a key role in educating the SMMEs to get them to a level where they would actually profit from those ESDs. And most of the times they put them in incubations, they put them in preparations, etc., but without actually touching on the key points of, I don't even have water, I don't even have bread to come to work. Forgetting that the core reason why most of those businesses get registered in the first place is to come out of poverty, which already goes against the principle of businesses, because essentially you are meant to be providing a solution to a problem that you've identified. But it already comes from that place that I just want to start a business to have some money, to not go hungry, to feed my family. So the perception is already wrong. And perhaps it becomes more of a CSR conversation before it actually becoming an ESD, investing more into empowering those specific, speaking to the mines, for example, those specific regions from which they are, making sure that they can at least offer them the basic minimums of what we know today as proper living or minimum living, expose them to the same amount of opportunity that you could have been exposed to when you started gradually living the different stages of their life, creates that passion into them to want more, educate them, and perhaps finding a way for them to solve problems. And before you know it, they start organically plugging into the suppliers and providing solutions to the services.
As a natural project.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Not just throwing money at them.
Yes.
And filling up the KPIs.
How are you going to throw money at me when I don't know what to do with it? What do you think I'm going to do with it, right? But also, the disconnect is with the training, throwing training. What are you training? Have you assessed what my learning capacity is for the training? You assessed or done a gap analysis to say, these are my biggest pressure points. And I love what you are saying in as far as CSR versus ESD, because if you cannot deal with the jockey who rides the horse, forget about the horse. Start with the jockey first. Get them trained. Are they okay? Have they eaten? Have they gotten training? Do they know how to handle the horse that they're going to be riding? It's a beautiful analogy one of my colleagues uses. And I think the incubation space I love that little portal, because the interventions could benefit the SMMEs, but you're not going to give me what you prescribe without assessing my needs.
Yes.
Right?
It's basically like going to a doctor saying, I've got a headache, and they give me antibiotics.
Exactly. You haven't even seen what the root cause is, because a lot of SMMEs, unfortunately, in my experience, go into business because they cannot get a job, number one, or they think they'll make money overnight, which is rather unfortunate, because if your first stance that you take is not, I have a solution to a problem that I've identified in the community that I live in, and I think I can be the one to champion it because it's my lived experience, right? Help me. This is what I need. This is how I think I can help. It's the onus is on the SMME to come with that value proposition to say, there is an issue, you have funds or interventions to assist me. It shouldn't always be about funding, because if I haven't learned how to manage the funding, how am I going to learn to manage everything else? True. It takes a lot to build a business. And I think the building blocks, the first foundational building blocks, starts with the individual, right? I always say, if you don't know financial literacy, I just sent my sisters to go buy food. I always treat them to say, before you even go out, know what your budget is, right? What do you want to get out of the budget, and where are you going? Plan it first. You can't go blindly. You're going to burn my fuel or an hour driving around mindlessly. You haven't even gone to an app. But there's tools available that are free. There's price check before I even shop. Yes, there are apps that you go onto for your food. But I'm like, hold on. Soap is probably 10 rands cheaper here. And if I'm buying 5 kg, I can get it cheaper. Let me plan it. And if it makes enough financial sense to get it delivered, why not? If it's 35 rand delivery fee.
True.
And it's those sort of intricacies. You want money. How do you plan for it? What do you need it for? And what's the return on investment? And how long is it going to push you for? And what are the incidentals? Because petrol goes up. You might hit a pothole. Do you have a budget for that? So I think these are the kinds of conversations, and as far as the training and systems being put in place that is not being done, the missing link. And I think another thing, going back to taking it, charity begins at home. If you build schools or help donate towards schools, then donate towards a financial literacy course.
True.
Deals with everyday things.
True.
It's not available on the curriculum, I don't think. And if it is, I don't think it pushes them enough to even have enough impact so that they apply it to their everyday living. Food goes up constantly. I go shopping once a month, but every time I do, I'm just like, this is ridiculous. And that's the reality we live in. If you're not going to be a valuable contributor to the economy, you need to start the journey and the path with self. To go outside. So I think there's reflective steps. It sounds easy. It's romantic. We're sitting behind a mic and talking about it now. But just start with the difficult dialogue. Collect data, real-time data. I'm involved in what we call focus group discussions, and people will tell you what they think you want to hear and not necessarily the truth. If we are saying, let's just put the masks off, what are your immediate needs? And what can we do that's sustainable? I'm not going to buy you 10 kg of food that's going to feed you for a week or two. And then you're back not eating my yacht of fish again. Exactly. Here's a fishing rod. Let me teach you how to fish. I mean, teach you how to maintain it, oil it, how to, keep it up, where to go to fish, where to preserve the fish so it doesn't, where to even get the fish to sell to other people and create a market.
Yeah.
So, I could talk about, I'm very passionate about it, but the business of ESD also has to start with a business of empathy and compassion and understanding what the real truth is so that you can serve a need.
True. So I feel like bringing the key issue back to its roots. We as Black people come from families where we did not have access to finance. We never had money. We literally just survived somehow. But when you look at that, it robbed us from an opportunity to actually understand how money works. You mentioned the fact that you sent your sister to go and buy something. But most of the time, those are the skills that we develop already when we start earning. We are never thought that one day you are going to be earning. By that time, you need to be able to assess what are the necessities you need to live and what are the essential things you need and what are what you call entertainment. How do you separate the two? How do you prioritize them? How you make 100 rand last as long as possible so you can sustain yourself until the next step? How do you save as much as possible? And how do you make sure that you invest that saving so that one day it can also start generating more and more? Those, unfortunately, are things that only some of us has managed to learn, sometimes out of the mistakes that we've made, because we've been lucky enough to be exposed to it long enough, mistake after mistake, and eventually we caught up. But like you said, if there was financial literacy, which I still struggle to believe why it is actually not a subject in the curriculum.
Absolutely, 100%. Why is it not a subject in the curriculum like with the subjects you have on your matric certificate?
True. Because when you think of it, early exposure to anything will first feel hard, but the more you get exposed to it, the more you actually finding way to solve that problem. It challenges you as a person. Once you've solved it, human beings are meant to solve problems over and over. Unconsciously, you start looking for another problem to solve. And over a period of time, you become better, you become thoughtful, you become leader in whichever environment that you are throwing yourself in. And too many of us do not actually even know how to solve basic financial issues.
Yes.
We don't know how to earn.
And we don't know what's available to us in as far as tools and apps that are completely free, right?
True. Look at ChatGPT, for example.
I love that tool. It's my favorite. It's made my life so much easier, and there's still lots to learn. I love it.
I'll give you an example. Someone could spend the time on the internet scrolling recklessly on Instagram. They could use that same time to learn a new skill, because essentially we now live in a day and time where information is available to everyone. We are all walking on gold, but what differentiates us is how we learn the skill to dig gold out. But gold is there for everyone to grab. Knowledge is there. Every skill is there.
Yeah.
I was talking to someone early this morning, and I was telling them that if we lived in 1855, it would have actually been easier for us to make a living just by knowing how to plant a tree. That would have been enough. It would have been sufficient.
That's an interesting.
So the economy at the time did not require someone to have multifaceted level of skills.
Okay.
Because knowledge was reserved for a few. So the person that would be planting a tree would have spent a tremendous amount of time to understand trees and how it works.
And how to make it thrive.
Yes. So the lack of information made that skill to become something that he could assert himself as an authoritative voice in planting trees, therefore making a living out of it.
You don't think that's what's happening with the school system to get us dumbed down?
Possibly.
So that because knowledge is a currency, it's currency, right? So I'm not being a conspiracy theorist, but it's available to me that perhaps That's how the system was created. You're going to create a slave out of me because I have limited knowledge.
I have limited knowledge.
And my currency is the knowledge. That's why I'm the boss. That's why I'm able to ascend to a stance 20 levels higher than you and then get you to do my work immediately. And all I do is the bosses collect from you. In your time, probably even your intellect. I'm taking your soul. Basically, am I not?
Exactly.
Because you're enslaved to me. At the end of the month, I give you enough so that you can go.
Do whatever, the bare minimum.
Absolutely.
But the truth is, I also know that you have access to the exact same information, but you are not consciously making that decision to change your life.
That's the thing.
That's where the issue starts. There is, because there is another podcast that I followed where the narrator made a thoughtful discussion about the fact that we are what we say that we are what we eat, but we are also what we watch. We are what we consume.
100%.
In any given 24 hours, we have a limited amount of willpower that we have access to. It's literally like your airtime on your phone. You don't have unlimited airtime. So the more decisions you make throughout the day, the more you're running out of willpower. And what ends up happening, you become exhausted.
And that's the thing. See, that's something that's not available to us in a layman sort of way, because you have burnt so much. Even choosing an outfit is terrible, because you're like, I'm going to lay out 5. By the time you know it, 30 minutes has passed and you're indecisive, as opposed to, let me empower myself. What message am I trying to communicate with what I want to wear? Do it the night prior, at least narrow it down to 3 options. That's why I love, and it'll be a podcast for another day, the concept of minimalism, right? And how it's liberated a lot of people with simple things that seem minuscule. But again, going back to a point about what you put into your ear gate, your eye gate, your mouth gate, that's a diet.
Yep.
It's not only the food that you eat, right? And I think there's consciousness around it with social media, where a lot of people are coming up and say, protect yourself as much as you possibly can, I beg your pardon. So whether it's through the environments, the people, spaces, even with alcohol, I see a lot of people are talking against alcohol now to say it's poison that you're consuming. It steals your time, probably just keeps breaking some things down in your system. And one thing I learned from you is to afford the first hours to your faith or to yourself, right?
Yeah.
And center yourself to that. There's nothing as liberating as that, starting your day when the world is relatively quiet, right? And guard your time and your consumption jealously, right? And you and I think this year, without, outright saying it, have decided to be producers more than consumers, right? Because we've been enlightened. History, your bank account is your feedback. It's always feedback to say, you're dropping the ball here.
What am I prioritizing?
Why are you anxious at the end of the month? Somebody actually said, I was doing a course, and this girl said, me, I always have money. January has no bearing on me. It's just a month on the calendar. I'm like, how do you do it? She said, because I plan. I know there's going to be Christmas and spending. I know Macro has Black Friday deals in November. It's marginal. It's not what it used to be. But I plan. I'm not disciplined because I know better than the next person. I'm disciplined because I decide that I don't want that anxiety. So what's the trade-off? The pain of frustration and anxiety and singing the same song, different year, same script, different cast. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Or are you going to take choose your heart? It's the trendiest thing to say. Keeping fit is hard. Being, unhealthy is hard. Choose your heart. Spending sleepless nights building your empire is hard. Sitting and being frustrated about what could have been is hard. Choose your heart.
True.
So somebody that was close to me is no more, and they used to say excuses serve only the people who make them. And only for a prescribed period of time, because you're going to get frustrated with the potential time. 10 years would have passed. What could you have done? You could have a PhD by now if you had decided, I'm going to choose my heart. That means sacrificing time, money, places, people to ensure that I get this. How badly do you want it? And I think the same is true with our life decisions within business or choosing careers. And that's why I'm so passionate about personal development, professional or career development, and business development. But start with the foundation. You can't build a ceiling if there's no walls. You can't build any walls if there's no foundation. And people are not okay with waiting. Instant gratification is the order of the day. Me looking at Yann, saying I want to get to where Yann is. Behind closed doors, when these cameras go off, what does Yann do to get to where he is?
True.
Am I willing to do what it takes?
True.
So I think we are in a generation where we could be anything we want to be, anything at all. But the question is, are you willing to do what it takes?
Yeah.
I watched a documentary on Chinese kids in China who are trained from age 3. And as a maternal person, I'm like, this is a child abuse. Why do kids wake up at 3 a.m. and then they do jiu-jitsu or whatever it was for a prescribed period of time? But they tracked them, and all of them in that school, I think it was one of these militant boarding schools, were all successful. Because there was a routine, process. You were left with little options. You have to be successful. That's the only option. There's no plan B.
True.
Otherwise, leave.
True. I think for me, the biggest lesson that I've learned is success is a choice. And
It is.
that choice starts with understanding that we all have the same 24 hours. What you decide to do with your 24 hours is what's going to determine success for you or not. You could either decide to have those 24 hours dedicated into continuously entertaining and distracting yourself, or you could decide to empower yourself over and over until it actually creates something different in you. The fact that you mentioned that you don't know what Yann does behind the scenes and do that, but the truth is, nothing is being reinvented in the life we live in. Everything has been done already.
There's nothing new under the sun.
Nothing new under the sun. There is a guideline to actually succeed in life. And it starts with tracking each and every single activities you do and the impact it has to you. Literally doing a life audit, looking at how many things you do and you distract yourself with what are the impact that they have on your life. Are they taking from you or are they empowering you? The 2 or 3 hours that you spend watching soapies, are you learning from it?
Or even the new soapies now is social media. It's a new soapies.
It's the new soapies. We scroll recklessly without realizing it, but before you know it, you've spent 5 hours of data you probably do not have that you were supposed to use to go and chat GPT, learn a new skill or apply for a new job, but you literally spent it just scrolling.
Yeah. And it's a romantic concept, Yann, to be disciplined, and it takes work, and it's easy to say out of our mouths, but no one knows you better, well, except your creator, than yourself. I had to trick myself, and my habit was instinctively patting for my phone when I woke up. It's a knee jerk. You don't even think anything of it because it's something you're so accustomed to. And then when I realized, hold on, I grabbed the phone, it's 3 a.m. What am I meant to do? To dedicate an hour perhaps to prayer and meditation. But I'm on Instagram instead. Self-management. I said this in the last interview. So I would take the phone and put it far away from me. Now I know myself. Once I am warm, it's very difficult to get me out of bed. But the trip, with the alarm going off at a certain time to remind me it's time to pray, to walk from the bedroom to wherever the phone is, the kitchen. I'm already wide awake. I'm managing myself because I know what my crutches are now, right? So now I'm alert. What am I going to do? Switch the alarm off, go back and perhaps get my little corner to read. And I see you posting books that you're reading. I love that you're sharing the knowledge you're consuming as well. You know, you lift as you rise, and that's also a choice whether they engage with it or not.
True.
But also in the same breath, I want us to break it down to perhaps realities that might not be available to us. Somebody that's staying in a shanty town, no electricity, no lights, right? That's their environment and circumstance. All they know is that they want to get out of there, but they don't know how to get out of there. Oh, it's all good and well. At least you have a phone to scroll, or at least you have somewhere, library to go to. You need to, there's always things available to us that we can get access to. In townships, there's libraries, there's recreational centers, or even a mentor that's available that's willing to say, I'm here to be used, use me. He can be that drunkard uncle that's always speaking English out of his nose twanging. Go to him and say, Papa, what's your story? You know, I see something, maybe you went off the trail sometime, but just by looking at you and how you carry yourself and articulate yourself, although you have a bottle of Zamalek, I know that something went wrong. You know what I mean? Yeah. But we tend to judge each other, shun each other, brush each other off. And complaining is very easy to do. It's the safest box you could hide under. Oh, I don't have this. Yes, it's your reality. We appreciate it. But what can you do within the environment? Environment is everything. You want to move from a certain toxic environment that you're in to something else, whether it's your geographical location or the office that is, you have the most toxic boss, or even a relationship. You need to be so fed up with it that you start looking around for, where is that light? You say there's a tunnel and at the end of it, there's a light. Where is it? And you explore. There's always things speaking to you, directing you. And it's such a shame. I wish every township, because I was a township girlie myself, and that's why I go back to my frame of reference, that we had somebody available to say, I'm here, use me. Use me. I mean, I think I'm fortunate in that I was raised by a grandmother who had everybody come into the house. She didn't even have to say it, but her actions, her reach was that, use me, I'm available. And she also has a story of her own. 3 unpublished books sitting on her laptop. By God's grace, I'll help publish them. But God always places people to help you. You just need to be attuned and want it badly enough.
I think for me, because my entire life was transformed when I gave my life to Christ. And I started seeing things in a different eye. But the one element that stood out was the fact that we serve a God that gave us the gift of creativity, because He's creative Himself. So we have that gift in us. And we tend to not realize that for as long as you are alive, you can look around and you can actually find something that will take you just 1% out of the situation that you find yourself in. But the first step is to actually take the first step. Nothing will happen.
I like that. I'm going to use it. The first step is to actually take the first step. Yes. I love that.
Because most of the time we sit, we complain, we sulk, we find all sort of excuses not to take the first step. But how about switch off the TV, go out and look around?
I feel like you're reprimanding me because even to get the show out there, you was just like, let's do it, just do it. I'm here. And I think if you and I hadn't crossed paths, it would still be a romantic idea in my head. Because feedback is always there. Oh, Mel, you're well spoken. Oh, Mel, I heard you MC a gig. Or you a keynote here. And I'm just like, yeah, but I'll get to it. And I think it's imposter syndrome for me, if I'm to be vulnerable, because I'm like, what is it that I have to offer? Yeah. And how sustainable is it? And it's not my business. The Creator who gave me the talents that He has bestowed upon me will take care of everything. And I think in how this show has come about, it's a testament to that. I feel, to your point, we're all blessed in one regard or another. That's why you have people sitting on here that we invite to the show to say, we have identified you have a superpower.
Yeah.
We want to celebrate you and get your story, because there's people who you could minister to who are just waiting. It's like, hold on, I know this person. I've seen them on TV, or I've seen them at a certain show or whatever. Or they might not know them at all. And that is just the penny that drops. So I just feel that we need to do what we can. We can't be arrogant enough to think that, I mean, I'm 40. I'm praying for another 40 years if God gives me that grace. But should He call me home earlier, I need to leave empty and use whatever He's given me. And that's not available to everybody. So I think with people who are enlightened in a certain way, it's our responsibility to bless others by imparting that knowledge. To your point, you said earlier, you don't feel that people who are in the know and our bosses are imparting those skills and to say, let me carry the baton, pass the baton for somebody else to carry it. So we need to go back to those old school ideals, man.
I mean, there's nothing more painful than waking up at 80 years old or 90 years old and realizing I could have done better with my life. I could have done this. I had this idea that I didn't execute. And starting to see other people that did better than you that actually executed the same idea that you initially had. Because that's also what happens over and over. The more you hold and hog onto one idea without acting on it, it ends up going to someone else. And before you know it, you start living your life in regret because the gift was entrusted to you.
Yes.
But you decided not to do anything with it.
You had every reason in the book not to do it.
Exactly.
I don't have money. I don't have content. I don't know how to do it.
And that's the most important trick. The biggest skill that successful people have is they're quick to execute whichever idea they have.
And test it.
And
be okay with failing.
Yeah.
So we're crippled by failure, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Because think about it. There's a saying, a quote that resurfaces on social media and in motivational and personal development books. If you knew that you would not fail, if failing was not an option, what would you do?
What would you do?
It's such a light thing, but when you think about it, it's failure that cripples us, or the fear of failure, right? We don't want to test and fail and reinvent. And that's why I love bold innovators, right?
Yeah.
Disruptors.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it. I'll learn as I go. And that's why I have a bias and greater respect for street smarts than I do book smarts. Because book smarts are just theory. Doers are like, we'll learn as we go. If I then have to come back and spend time in the AMs to get the book aspect and the theory, because people tested it, there were case studies, there's a place and respect for that. But nothing beats experience.
True.
Trial and error.
Put yourself in the fire.
Yeah.
Let it burn you. You learn from it.
100%. 100%. And I think that's something we need to encourage in schools. I think there's a lot of people that are entrepreneurs, but they don't know that they are.
Yeah.
Right?
True.
Because they don't have the opportunities, the space, environment, or the exposure to even do it. Right? And that's why a lot of friends of mine fight me, because I'm like, I encourage a gap year when it comes to kids. Just expose them as much as they possibly can. I think if I had the power, I would insist that it's part of the school curriculum. What are you rushing for? If your qualification is 4 years, what's an extra year? To travel, to explore, to get different exposures to traditions, cultures, systems, processes, and a way of life that you were not exposed to. You need to open yourself up to that. And then decide with absolute conviction what you're going to study and why. Exposure, failure, be okay with failing, and fail fast.
What do you think are the, I wouldn't say the metrics, but what do you think are the signs to identify the entrepreneurial spirit in someone? What makes someone an entrepreneur?
I would, I'll say why I'm an entrepreneur, but and I'll just compare it side by side against what I'm seeing today. My entrepreneurship journey did not start because that's what I always knew I wanted to do and be. It started because there was a need. We had to eat. I had to help mom with rent. I had to help my sisters with clothes. I had to, it's a classic firstborn thing, right? You're the deputy mother by default. And I would observe things around me and say, ooh, summer's hot. This Sigzo, there was a concentrated little bottle of juice called Sigzo. He would have to add water and sugar, put it in plastic bags, and then I
sell it. Yeah.
Right? And I think at the time it was 10 cents or 20 cents. And collectively, this thing I bought for 6 rands has made me 50 rand, 100 rand. Now we can buy an extra packet of maize meal. That is a need. I was solving a problem. That's exactly it. But, and I think in circumstances where we are environments where there's little to go with, you make it stretch or you make it grow, expand on it. And I'm saying this because this big decade gaps between me and my siblings, and I see how they operate. My sister's about the vibes. She's brilliant, has a God-given talent, but her sense of structure and order needs, a lot. She's all about the Instagram, the vibe, and I'm like, okay, you get the money, and what are you going to do with it? And I'm like, what have you done with the money? Yeah, I had a certain amount. Where is it? What did you do with it? What are you going to sustain? And I think they have more opportunities in as far as social media reach and the idea of cool. Cool is a currency. These kids are cool, man. Right? And I'm like, you're cool, you're beautiful, you're on the beat, and you have your finger on the pulse of what's going on there. Use it, right? So from that perspective, I think we can borrow from each other because I'm a little reserved when it comes to certain things. I'm calculated. She's all about doing it, making it happen in social media friends. And she can, reach whoever who has a number or subscribers or whatever the case may be. And say, can you do this for me? I'll do it for free. Can you advertise? So I think the disconnect with both generations or ways of doing things is that we're not borrowing from each other's schools of thoughts because it's a balance. I always say entrepreneurship is something that is either trial and error or something that you are intentional and deliberate with. And there's people who are just given gifts that are amazing. That's why it's important to build a team. And maybe you don't have the capacity to do it. Building teams is important to support you. I am not technologically inclined. I want to learn. AI is available, but perhaps I'm better placed on strategic stuff and let somebody else do the IT part or the finance part. So finding a tribe, which is a trial and error thing. People knock you, people will steal from you, people will grow beyond you, which is healthy and okay, and I encourage it. But it's a never-ending jigsaw puzzle.
I think if I had to put it in a framework, the first one would be find your why. Your why was, I need to feed my family.
That was my why.
That was your why.
That's always been my why.
Secondly, it's looking around you and finding opportunities. That's the key for any business. Your opportunity was summer is hot. Let me sell the popsicles. That was your finding opportunity. Thirdly, was empowering yourself to actually understand if you had the skill necessary to grab those opportunities. That's when you start looking at your life, seeing what you are good at, and finding a way to get it aligned to the opportunities that you had. Fourth is not being touched by the no, because there were so many no's that you had to go through.
More than I care to count.
Yeah.
100%.
Before you got to the yes. And it's also understanding that the entrepreneurship journey is going to have 1 gazillion no before you get the 1 yes that's going to change your life forever.
And the first no you get is from yourself.
It's from yourself. That's the first person that you have to fight, looking at yourself in the mirror, but also being capable of seeing each and every single no as a lesson, because most of the time those no's knock us down.
Yeah.
We feel defeated, but we forget that it's an opportunity to then ask the question, why?
I always joke with my friends and they think I'm silly for this example. I have a great admiration for men. That gender is my hero. It's like the group of men are my heroes because how many times do men get rejected generally? By the opposite sex, by the world, I know that we have different struggles, genders, but no matter how many times you tell a man no,
He's going to find a way
if you're
to
the object of his desire, he'll chase you. And if it's serious, he'll chase you to the end of the world, right? And we take that for granted, but that's also a life skill. Getting knocked down, being rejected all the time. Sometimes it's with a bit of tact. Sometimes it's outright rude, but you take it and you still wake up and do it again the next day. And I think that's sort of the resilience that is a differentiator between the two genders. We're not accustomed to, we get chased. What flowers? What the prize? What? And I make these real life applications because it's undeniable. And that's why there's more men CEOs. That's why there's more male leaders, right? That is sort of part of a building block of what it takes. And it doesn't matter if you think you are Miss World and he's a blue collar, that's what if he thinks you're good looking, he's gonna let you know. So what are women gonna say? You So those are also things we don't consider when it comes to the reasons why things are the way they are, right? And that's why we live in a curious time, and I always try to predict what's going to happen 10 years from now with the way things are, with the opportunities. And now there's more women in academia. I'm seeing that a lot. And now it feeds into the social ills. Say, oh, these women think they're better because they're learned. Oh, I can't approach her. She's hard to get, boss lady. But at the end of the day, we're just little girls. Everybody needs a partnership.
And the more you spend time with them, the more you actually realize you have more common elements with them.
We don't advocate for each other. The conversation, I refuse to get into a gender benching conversation about the whole men are trash movement. Yes, I've been hurt, but I guess I've met wonderful men in my lifetime. And there are good men and good women out there, right? We mustn't push the narrative of our pain bodies and our wounds to move in life. That it shouldn't. Yes, you should move with a bit of caution. Yes, you must learn from your experiences. But we need each other. We coexist. God put us both here for a reason. And if we realize that, we could make absolute magic together. And that's why I love businesses where it's a husband and wife team. Those are my favorites. Those are my favorites because you have different skill set. We're much more intuitive. You're much more bottom line driven. It's a beautiful dance. There's no denying. So I think there's a lot to be said about how things are interconnected in business, in life choices, in what we then choose to say, this is how we're going to raise our children and develop our own culture. I can't predict what's going to happen a year from now. And I was saying I was curious about what's going to happen 10 years from now. But we live in very interesting times. And I think I'm blessed to have been born in this era.
I think let's try to speak to this person that's in a very dark place, that doesn't know what to do with their lives, but just want to get out of the place they are in financially. They might have not eaten today, or they don't even know where to start. What do we say to this person? Like, how do we change the trajectory of their lives?
You know, a lot of self-help books have spoken about this. The Good Word, the Good Book has already spoken about this. You have just spoken about this, finding your why. I think there's no better motivator. For some people, it might be because they see the mother struggling and they cannot take it anymore. For some people, it might be they have kids and they want better for them. For some people, it's I just want to make it out of the shack alive. Because the minute I step out of the door, I'm either being sold drugs or being coerced into selling drugs, whatever the reality is. But if your why is strong enough, I mean, you will always see something or get resources to get you out of that. It might not be immediate, but you use what you've got. I mean, when I was in Tabanchu, and I moved to Mafeking, I just felt like the dumbest person ever because I was from a small town and Mafeking had these broadcasting giants who were the cool kids. So I didn't quite fit in. And once I started finding who I was, then now I have to go to Joburg. It's a totally different ball game. And my ascension from one to the other was because I was curious about what's out there. There's more. My little world that I thought this is what life was about, right? And then I saw better, and then it became my why. I wanted to see, and that's why I love traveling so much. I love the idea of being exposed to realities that might not have been available to me or been my own. I could take a leaf out of somebody's book. So to go back to your question, what would I say to somebody who's struggling? Find your why. Let it drive you to a point where there is nothing that could get you, get in your way. I find the greatest motivator for most people is they want better for themselves or for their children, but also wanting better for your society. I always say to people who've made it in life, okay, you have ascended. Are you going back to where it all began?
Yes.
to say, let me contribute now that God has blessed. Are you blessed to be a blessing? Are you blessed just to keep blessing yourself, being a blesser?
Yeah.
Right? But yeah, be a blesser, but in the right sphere.
I think it's important to have a purpose. What and why you are doing it. What's the motivation behind it? And make sure that the purpose aligns with you serving other people.
Servant leadership.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because if you are only doing it for yourself, it gets to a point where you'll actually get to that level, then there's no more motivation for you. But if you're doing it to transform the society or the people around you, to have more people come out of the place that you are currently finding yourself in, then it becomes a constant motivation. You start impacting more and more lives. And the result of that is that you start actually becoming a blessing to people more and more. Yes, the situation that you are in currently is extremely difficult. It feels almost impossible. It feels like there's no way out. But you're actually alive. You are watching this. You are listening to this. You can use it as a motivation.
And what are the odds that this landed on your timeline? What are the odds? It's not by chance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can literally use it as a motivation to look around you and see how many no's you can actually get before you get a yes. Even if it's just getting 100 Rand each and every single day, for example, or each and every single week, that's already a start. Congratulations. You've gone from 0 to 100, but don't blow it up.
Yeah.
Find a way to get that 100 so it gives you 500 and slowly start learning about money skills. Empower yourself. Don't spend all your data on Instagram.
Yeah.
Go on to ChatGPT. It's free. Go on to Google. Learn something. Find new knowledge that's going to unlock a new level of exposure that you've never been involved to. Challenge yourself to learn something new. Ask questions. What does this mean? What does this do? Why does this work? Find something that you are passionate about and slowly start putting purpose into your life. Reduce the amount of time you spend on distractions. Be more thoughtful and mindful of each and every single element you do throughout the day. Take a pen and paper and write what you do within the next 24 hours.
And people lose motivation for different factors, right? If something is new and foreign, it might be a bit challenging to start. But I mean, going back to purpose, not a lot of people know what the purpose is, but it always screams loudly at you, right? I love the tool of saying, for me, I ground myself in my faith. That my why I'm clear on now, my how starts with my faith, right? And that's why I believe in total surrender and going with flow. For me, this chose me. I've dabbled in many businesses. And if you reflect hard enough, I mean, I try to also ask my mother questions about my history that I can't remember. But there's certain things, there's patterns about what chooses you, what is drawn. I mean, I get invited to speak. I get invited to moderate. I'm like, guys, didn't study for this. But God planted something within you that makes us call you each time. So I didn't choose this, it chose me. It will always speak to you. We take for granted what doesn't even matter what sector you're in, what lives you can impact and touch, right? And we take for granted how much of a blueprint is already available. You just listed a number of things that you could do that are free resources, right? But also, I spoke about surroundings. I also spoke about the people that are in your life. But that's divine destiny help us, or even the good book. Most places I go to, Bibles are free.
Yeah.
If you want a manual, there it is. You can't afford any other personal development book. Guess what? It's a development book that you want.
There's the development book of all development books available to you.
Exactly. We take it for granted. And it's us looking over everything as opposed to looking inwards and reflecting. Say, hold on. The science, the clarity, it's always been there. I was maybe not attuned to it at the time, but if you listen and numb the distractions, your social media that are easy to get to. Oh, buying this No, the money could be going something. Those distractions, always something fighting for your attention every single day. Could be telemarketers selling you something. It could be Mel just wanting to waste your time talking about something that happened 10 years ago that has no relation to what you want to do today. It could be anything. Just decide I'm not. My ear gate, my eye gate, my mouth gate is purely focused on my mission going forward. It's not easy to do, but if you want something bad enough, it has to hurt first before it liberates you and before you.
There's an author and business mogul that I listen to. It's called Myron Golden, and Myron Golden defines the Bible not as a religious book,
The business principles.
business principle,
I've seen them, yeah.
and
Yeah.
looking back, the biggest lessons of wisdom that I have actually came from reading the Bible from that angle, seeking wisdom within the Bible, and you end up actually realizing that each and every single other books you read found the source in the Bible.
Absolutely.
It's Bible principle that are just reformatting.
I agree. If you look deeply enough, every personal development book that you have stems from the Bible.
And it's free.
And it's free, right? There's even the YouVersion app. And I mean, I have friends and associates of different faiths, and they challenge me. I understand and appreciate that you're a Christian, but have you explored the Quran? I'm like, it's never been available to me. And then somebody said something that I've been reflecting on for the past couple of months to say, okay, Mel, you told me how you were born a certain place to certain people. But say, let's paint another scenario. If you were born to find a teenage mother and she gives you up and puts you on the porch of a family of a different faith, what would you have been exposed to? That sensitized me not to shun, judge, and or shy away, although I'm stern and rooted in my faith. But it allowed me another opportunity to say, we're all God's children, right? We all have different experiences, environments, and realities. That doesn't mean we should now gang up against each other. I'm not going to deal with you because you're not of the same faith as me. I'm not going to deal with you because you can't sit with us. That's absolute nonsense. I don't subscribe to that. And I find often it exposes me to unsavory, difficult conversations with people of the same faith as me. But I'm like, this is my journey. And if I land at a certain place, I know who and what I'm rooted in. That much I'm sure of. But I am a vessel. I don't know how long I'm going to be here for. And I'm not going to limit. I might not be for everybody, and that's okay. But I'm not going to shun the realities of all that is under God's very sun.
Sure.
So it's quite curious to me that we don't open our eyes and ears to things that are available to us when all the answers we've been looking for we already have.
Right in your face.
Absolutely. I went to a group training thing. I'm not going to say the name. I don't know if I'm at liberty to. But we did group therapy for a few days. And there was an exercise where somebody sits in front of you in a dim room. And they said, what do you want? We mentioned houses, jobs that we've been praying for. We mentioned the ideal husband. This madness went in. The more you answered, the louder the person who's asking the question.
What do you want?
Do you want? Until a penny dropped and said, nothing. That gave me goose pimples. Like, how do you mean you don't? That epiphany came to me because there's nothing we don't already have. Absolutely nothing we don't already have. We just have to do what it takes and go through the journey of getting it. So nothing is everything.
Jeremiah 29:11.
Yeah.
For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and to give you a future. Plans not to harm you. So what do you want? You already have everything.
Every single thing. There's nothing you need.
Okay. I think I'll end it there. We probably need to do more of this.
We need to. This is exciting. We're unpacking things that are lived experiences. If nothing at all, I'm happy that it takes its own route. I'm not anxious about what's scripted and what we have to talk about. Let it flow.
Let it flow.
Let it flow and reach who it needs to.
I think people should tell us what they want us to talk about next. That would be interesting.
100%.
Yeah.
Tell us what you want next.
All right. Thank you so much, Mel.
All right. Thank you, Yann.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cut. Hey.
Bravo.